everyone. My name is Cathy Lama Jackson. I'm part of Columbus KTC, or Columbus Karma Texan Chuling, excuse me for the acronym there. And today is a continuation of a class I taught a few months ago. So I'm going to be talking on Karma Chagme's wonderful books called Mountain Dharma. This is what it looks like. Today's the first time I figured out how to make my screen a little bit bigger. And it's a 5-volume set. Volume number 5 is all Tibetan, and the rest of it is in English. And I believe now there's a Chinese translation, which is wonderful. I'm hoping there'll be other languages over time. And so I thought I would speak a moment, kind of do a review a little bit of what I covered the last time. And so basically, I just want to say this up front. I'm not teaching at all today. I'm just sharing one of my favorite heartfelt books that has supported me over the years. I was very fortunate to be around when Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche presented these books back in the 90s and early 2000 at KTD Monastery. And I have a very close affinity and fond memories of getting this transmission. So I just thought for a moment, our author is Karma Chagme. I'm going to hold the book up again. You don't need to see me. You see Karma Chagme. He's from Eastern Tibet. He was born in 1613 and he left his body in 1678. And he was famous as a practitioner throughout his entire life. And at a certain point, towards maybe the middle of his life, he was approached by a student saying, and he was, by the way, I forgot to mention, a prolific writer. So wherever he went, he was an exquisite teacher in explaining how to do specific practices, very practical, nothing fancy, but really to the heart of what we need to learn. And a student approached him saying, by then, I forgot to mention, Karma Chagme was in retreat. And it's not uncommon if you were a realized master. Now, he was leading a group retreat, realized master. So he can still talk a little bit to the outside world. So people would sometimes come to the cave or the entrance of whatever their retreat building was. And sometimes there's a little hole in the door or in the window, or you could maybe put a little note in or something. And he was able to verbally talk with this monk that came to him saying, could I please dictate everything for you and put together everything you know regarding this practice of called Mountain Dharma. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about what that is today, but I want to first read his biography and then we'll move from there. So last time I met with you, I primarily went over the first book. Today I'm going to do a little selections of things that have really been talking to me from the other 3 volumes. And we may have one other class on this, we'll see. So let's just read. This is, by the way, these books. So this is volume 2. And these are from our monastery at Namse Bangso, or KTD Publications. Here's a picture of Khenpo Rinpoche teaching on this. Isn't that beautiful? And so the book is so well put together. This is one of the really big first projects our monastery started actually publishing books. In the very beginning, there is summation because there's over 54, I think there's 54 chapters of this text called Mountain Dharma. And in here, in each of these, at least the English volumes, I'm sure it's also in the Tibetan, is a wonderful table of contents, of course, a preface, and various, and there are 2 biographies and advice from Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, which are excerpts from various questions and answers. So what was unique was when Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche presented this, he did it very slowly. It would be so many weekends per month. And I was very fortunate to have just had a stroke and I wasn't working. So my husband would take me about a 12-hour drive to upstate New York from Ohio. And when we would be there for Friday, Saturday, and leave on Sunday to go back home. And we were able to really listen to a great deal of this teaching in I can't tell you how grateful I am that later someone transcribed this. I mean, first of all, we had a wonderful English transcriber, Lama Yeshe Gyamtso. And of course, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was not only teaching and reading the text, but giving his own commentary and then doing questions and answers. So in here, the very beginning of this book, not only a very thorough table of content, a lovely introduction, a short biography about who the author of the text is, Karma Chagme Rinpoche, a biography, very short one, of Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. Then we go into the actual book itself. And at the end is a lovely glossary, very thorough, really thorough index that you can look everything up in. And even the mantras that are referred to in here are written out in Tibetan, Sanskrit, and English. So I just want to let you know this. I consider these to be really reference works. So, all right, so let's go on. So let me reintroduce you, and please forgive me if you've already heard this before. And if you wish to follow along, out of volume 2 right now, I'm on page Roman numeral 23, short biography of Karma Chagme Rinpoche. He was born in accordance with the prophecies of Guru Rinpoche in the Do-Kham area of Tibet. This is eastern Tibet, in the year 1613. His father was a Mahasiddha, meaning an excellent practitioner, a great practitioner. His name was Pema Wangdarak, and his mother, Che Kyong Khe, was a wisdom dakini. At the moment of his birth, his father gave him the name Wangdarak Song and bestowed upon him his first empowerment. As a child, he was very accomplished in all aspects of study and Dharma practice. And by the time he was 9 years old, he had received many empowerments and had become well known for supreme intelligence and knowledge. Age 11, he then met Prawashara, from whom he received many empowerments, transmissions, and pointing out instructions. When he was 13, he began a solitary Chenrezi retreat. After completing this retreat, he began to bestow empowerments and give reading transmissions and instructions to everyone who requested them. At the age of 20, he received full ordination vows from the 10th Karmapa. So let's see, who was Choyun Dorje at the Serpu Monastery, and he received the name Karma Chagme. From that time, he diligently served the Sangha at Tutum Ningling, a monastery in the Surmang tradition. For the next few years, Karma Chagme studied with, received many empowerments, transmissions, and pointing out instructions from His Holiness the Karmapa, including Mahamudra, Dorje Pagmo, Chakrasamvara, Medicine Buddha. And he became quite well known, and his fame greatly increased in his public examination at the Karma Kagyu Monlam in 1865. Between the ages of 11 and 37, Karma Chagme entered into solitary retreat for at least a few months every year in order to accumulate root and accomplishment mantras. There was not a single mantra he had not accomplished. I'm going to just mention what that would mean. That means, let's say a mantra, for instance, Chenrezi's mantra, Om Mani Padme Hum, has 6 syllables. In order to meet the requirement to do that practice, you would do at least 100,000 of each syllable. So you would do 600,000 of Om Mani Padme Hum. So he had met and was able to accumulate root and accomplishment mantras. There was not a single mantra he had not accomplished. During this time, he also received many auspicious visions, dreams, and signs of accomplishment of various deities. At some point, Karma Chagme returned to his native region and built a retreat house at Palri. He resolved to accomplish Gyawa Gyamtso, this is called the Red Chenrezi practice, and received the 4 empowerments in a dream from the 10th Karmapa, Chogyam Dorje. Soon after this, 1650, at the age of 37, he began a strict 13-year retreat, persevering in the practices of Gyawa Gyamtso and Mahamudra. During this period, he wrote many texts and commentaries, including this one, Ri Chu, Instructions for Mountain Retreat, written in 1659. In the same year, Karma Chagme recognized and enthroned the great Teratan Mingyur Dorje, who gave oral transmission lineage teachings for which Karma Chagme was the scribe. In 1663, at the age of 50, Karma Chagme ended his 13-year retreat. He continued to greatly benefit beings, performing ceremonies, giving empowerments, often attended by over 4,000 students. Wow. Karma Chagme performed all possible stages of practice and every miraculous deed for the sake of benefiting others. In 1678, the year of the Earth Horse, at the age of 66, Mahasiddha Karma Chagme Rinpoche announced to thousands that the time had come for him to change realms. And he passed away. Many signs occurred at the time of his death, including rainbows, clouds in the shape of 8 auspicious symbols, and countless images of Gyawa Gyamtso and Dorje Pagmo embossed on his bones. So I'm just looking here. I'm not sure if anyone is here today. I can't really tell. I don't know if anyone is watching this. But let's see. Oh, I see now. Thank you. Somebody blipped it over. Oh, good morning, James. Oh, thank you, Tanya. I wasn't sure. It must be how I had stretched it out. So if any of you have any questions, hi, Anne. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it. I had put it on another view, so I just saw myself, and that's kind of boring. Okay, good. So if you happen to have these books, oh, hi, Caitlin. These are on sale at KTD Bookstore, Namse Bangso Bookstore. Oh, this is so sweet. Everyone's coming in now. I appreciate you all coming in. It's a little lonely. I love that we're doing Restream because this goes out to YouTube and to Facebook, but it's a little different because I have an iPad. So everything's a little different the way I see it. All right. So that was a very, very brief description of the beautiful life of Karma Chagme. So I want to talk about my teacher, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. I shouldn't say my teacher, the teacher of thousands, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, who passed away October 6, 2019, at the age in his late 90s, I believe 95. So coming up this week is, in terms of our calendar, the Western calendar would be his anniversary date. But because of the Tibetan lunar calendar, it's really a little different. So Khenpo Rinpoche died on the Parinirvana of the 16th Karmapa, the Enlightenment Day that the 16th Karmapa died years before. And so it's going to be celebrated at KTD Monastery. Just want to let you know, let's see here. On I believe it's the 13th, either it's 10/13 or 10/12. You'll have to look it up at the KTD Monastery website. It will be on YouTube, and from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, they will be doing a type of ceremony. But because Rinpoche, Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche, now we're talking about the person who at the monastery had presented this teaching, because he had such devotion and faith in Karma Chagme. I told the story the last time, about a month or two before he passed. He had brought from Tibet a very special Lama that came and did the reading transmission of all of the works of Karma Chagme. And there was a special place. If you go to our monastery, we have a main shrine with a very beautiful Buddha. But now there's a special shrine over on the side. I'm sure there's a special name for it, where all the offerings are made. So all the texts were stacked there, very beautifully wrapped, and brought over from Tibet. And during over 30 or 60 days, I believe 60 days, they were read. And so people would go into the shrine room at 9 a.m. till noon, and then usually like 1 or 2 in the afternoon till 5 or 6, and just sit still. It's called a reading transmission or a lung, but it was very, very sacred to hear the actual. This text was completely read. All of his teachings were read, and we were there to absorb it. Lama Cathy and several people from our center were there, and Lama Cathy and I know someone here, Sue Ellen Steinmetz, they received the entire transmission. They never missed a day. I was fortunate just to be there for a little bit along with my husband. What was going on at the same time was Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was not in the main shrine room, which was unusual. He was upstairs because he was getting ready to die. And on the very last day of the entire event, Rinpoche came downstairs, and much to my dream, he, the Lama, I'm so sorry, I forgot his name right now, that was there giving the transmission, and Khenpo Urgyen, each took one of the texts. One was the first, one was the middle, one was the last of all the text. We went to each of them, and they bopped our heads with that. Was such a wonderful blessing. So I thought for a moment it would be nice if I read a short biography about Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche. We know him from the days where he built many of you might not have been there when he actually built our monastery, but he endured incredible hardships, and he did everything for the sake of everyone else, always. So I thought, also in the same book, the very next thing is his biography, very short, and I would like to read this because I know the Tibetan calendar will be next week, but I also realized Rinpoche had died a year ago, this coming on the 6th, and so I would like to really read this. So Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was born in Rapshu in the province of eastern Tibet of Kham. He was born at sunrise on Mahakala Day. So this is really common when you read a biography of a saint or a teacher. It's a little different than just saying where they're born on. They're going to show all the signs. So he was born at sunrise, Mahakala Day, 29th day of the second month of the year of the Wood Mouse, 1924. On this day, very early in the morning, immediately after Rinpoche's mother went to fetch water from the stream and carried the full vessel of water back by herself, Rinpoche was born without giving any pain to his mother. According to Tibetan tradition, all of these special circumstances indicate a very auspicious birth. Rinpoche's father was a devoted Manjushri practitioner. Manjushri is the deity of profound wisdom, and he constantly recited Manjushri's sutras. He would go to sleep reciting the sutra, and when he would wake up, he would simply continue with his recitation. His practice was so strong that he was known to benefit even animals when they died. When Rinpoche was quite a young boy, his father taught him to read and write and to study and memorize Dharma texts. Rinpoche decided at a young age to follow the path of his older brothers, who were both monks. At the age of 12, he entered Tranghu Monastery in So-Nyen, eastern Tibet, and for the next 6 years, Rinpoche studied and practiced at this monastery. At the age of 18, he went to Serpu Monastery to visit the seat of His Holiness the 16th Karmapa. So Rinpoche is from way eastern Tibet, and so I'm sure it was a long journey to travel to central Tibet. So this is in Lhasa. So now he's at 18 and he's visiting the Karmapa, who the Karmapa was also 18. They're both the same age. I didn't realize that. Who is not yet old enough. So the Karmapa was not yet old enough to give full ordination vows. So the following year, Rinpoche received his Gelong monk vows from the 11th Taisi Rinpoche at Palpong Monastery. After the Gelong ordination, Rinpoche returned to Tranghu Monastery and participated in the annual Yarne 3-month summer retreat. Soon after this, he joined the year-long Vairochana group retreat, which is special for Tranghu Monastery. And by the end of the retreat, Rinpoche was very enthusiastic to participate in the traditional 3 retreat, which he began shortly thereafter. After completing the 3-year retreat, Rinpoche expressed his heartfelt wish to stay in retreat for the rest of his life. He went to his uncle's cabin and began his lifelong retreat. But after only 1 year, the 8th Tralleg Rinpoche strongly advised him to come out in order to receive transmissions from Khantrul Rinpoche and to join Trungpa Rinpoche and other lamas in the newly formed monastic college at Trungpa Monastery, which was under the directorship of Khenpo Lodro Lapsal. So Tralleg Rinpoche felt that Khenpo Rinpoche had attained insight and realization in his years of retreat, and that this further education would be of great benefit to many students in the future. So the second Jamyang Khantrul Rinpoche, the 8th Tralleg Rinpoche, and His Holiness the 16th Karmapa are Khenpo Khantrul Rinpoche's main teachers. In 1954, when Rinpoche was 30 years old, he completed his advanced training. He received the title of Khenpo, that's abbot in English. For the next 4 years, he was an attendant and tutor to Trungpa Rinpoche. They traveled together, teaching, studying, and benefiting beings. By the late 1950s, the threat of communist China was creating an increasingly dangerous situation for the Tibetan people. In 1958, Rinpoche left eastern Tibet, because that's closer to China, Trungpa Monastery, along with Trungpa Rinpoche, Zuru Tukul Rinpoche, and 3-year-old Tralleg Rinpoche. With a few horses and some provisions, the party began their long trek. After 2 weeks, they realized they were surrounded by communist soldiers. They managed to escape, but for 7 days, they survived without any food. During this time, the elder Zuru Tukul Rinpoche fell from his horse. So Khenpo Rinpoche's younger brother, Lama Sonam, who I've met, he's really wonderful, he carried him the rest of the way. Eventually, they met a group of nomads who gave them some provisions. After 2.5 months, they arrived at Serpu, that's central Tibet, Serpu Monastery. His Holiness the 16th Gyalwa Karmapa, with its profound vision, was aware of the dangers and told them they must leave immediately for Sikkim. He provided them with necessary provisions, and in March 1959, the lamas left Serpu. So I'm just trying to see how long this was. This was many years, many months at least. So the group quickly reached the border between Tibet and Bhutan. At that time, the Bhutanese were unwilling to grant passage, and as a result, the party spent 1 month at the blockaded border until His Holiness the Dalai Lama secured permission for the refugees to enter into India. It was, I have to say, I have profound gratitude and thanks to all of those Himalayan kingdoms that opened their borders to so many monks, because not only were these monks saving their own lives, but what they were carrying was primarily texts and religious items. They had very little room to carry food. Rinpoche said at night they would flip a rock to decide whose boot they were going to boil that night for boot soup. So I added that story, sorry. So again, the group quickly reached the border between Tibet and Bhutan. And then after they got in through there, the Rinpoches then traveled to Buxador, located at the border of India and Bhutan. There was a refugee camp that was set up there. More than 1,500 monks were gathered at Buxador. I heard it was 4,000. Buxador is a little corner. I have actually been there. I went there by mistake. It was a prison, later turned into an internment camp for the Tibetan monks that had escaped. So in this book, this version, it says more than 1,500 monks were gathered at Buxador. Their vision was to maintain and preserve the Dharma. And during this time, due to the heat and unhygienic conditions, disease spread rapidly throughout the camp. And by the 8th year of residing there, Rinpoche was terribly sick. In 1967, Rinpoche went to Rumtek Monastery in Sikkim, which was then the seat of the Karmapa in India, where he actually was asked to teach monks and perform various rites for the local Buddhist communities. As the state of his health worsened, Rinpoche was sent by His Holiness the 16th Karmapa to teach at Tilakpur nunnery in Himachal Pradesh, founded by His Holiness and Sister Palma. She was a Western nun. After this, Rinpoche traveled to Tashijong Monastery, also located in Himachal Pradesh, where he received the Dam Lak Zo empowerment, transmission, and teaching from Dingo Khyentse Rinpoche. Rinpoche's health improved while he was there, but once he returned to Rumtek, his condition worsened once again. His Holiness then sent Rinpoche to Tasi Choling Monastery in Bhutan. Unfortunately, his health grew worse, leading a very long, serious hospital stay. Upon His Holiness' return from the United States in 1975, Rinpoche returned to Rumtek. In the same year, Khenpo Rinpoche received the title Chuje Lama, meaning Superior Dharma Master, from His Holiness the 16th Gyawa Karmapa. So for many years, Rinpoche had been ill with tuberculosis and now was close to dying. He asked His Holiness the 16th Karmapa if he could go back into retreat for the rest of his life. But instead, His Holiness requested that Rinpoche go to the United States as his representative to establish Karma Triana Dharma Chakra, His Holiness' seat in North America. So initially, Rinpoche was unable to attain a visa because he was so sick. But then he soon acquired a special type of visa enabling him to enter the United States specifically to receive medical help. Nonetheless, sick as he was, Rinpoche boarded an airplane, which he said many times was strange because, they had the myth when the iron bird flies, Tibet would collapse. So when the Tibetans first saw planes, they didn't know what they were looking at. They had never seen anything like a metal airplane or any kind of plane. So Rinpoche boarded an airplane and he said he was terrified. I remember he said this many times. In February 1976, to begin a different life as a teacher of Dharma in a culture and environment far removed from his home in eastern Tibet. When Rinpoche did arrive in New York City, he was greeted by Tenzin Chuni, who was one of the presidents of our monastery for many, many years, Lama Yeshe Losal, who had been sent ahead by His Holiness while Rinpoche awaited approval of his visa. Immediately, once he got into America, Rinpoche was taken to a hospital in New York where he spent 1 month receiving treatment. It would take another year for him to regain his weight, become strong and healthy again. Years later, when His Holiness the 16th Karmapa visited the United States, Rinpoche thanked him for saving his life. His Holiness responded by telling Rinpoche that if he had stayed in India, he would have surely died. After his initial recovery, Rinpoche, along with Tenzin Chuni, Lama Loso, Lama Ganga, and Yeshe Namdak, moved into a house in Putnam County that had been offered by Dr. Shen, a devoted student of Karmapa. From there, Rinpoche traveled to New York City every week to offer teachings at what was to become one of the first KTCs, the Karma Texan Trillions in the United States. Soon, more centers were established, and when His Holiness visited in 1977, the search for a permanent site for His Holiness' seat in America began. His Holiness told Rinpoche that he should open a new center on the auspicious day of Sakadawa in 1978. That Sakadawa was a special Buddhist holy day. Early in this year, they located a good property and purchased the Mead house located on the mountaintop in Woodstock, New York. The day Karma Triana Dharma Chakra opened was the very day, the 15th day, 1978, that the Holiness the 16th Karmapa commanded Rinpoche to do so. Ever since this time, Rinpoche has been teaching extensively with warmth and directness, communicating with compassion and wisdom and all the teachings of the Kagyu lineage. The Venerable Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche was the abbot of Karma Triyana Dharma Chakra until 2019. And now our abbot is Khenpo Ujin Rinpoche. So that is a brief bio of Rinpoche. And one thing I would like to say is I was very fortunate. He asked my husband and I to live in India for a little while and try and learn Tibetan. I think what I learned more than anything was how precious our teachings were and our teachers were in America. And I met more people that told me stories of Rinpoche when he was in Buxa. He was often being hospitalized because he had really serious tuberculosis. Many Tibetans did because they came from a high desert and they went to India, which was a very moist area full of TB, and they had never been exposed to that before. So when he would go into certain places in the hospital, they would always give the monks the best medication. So at night, when everyone left, Rinpoche never took most of his medication. He gave it to everyone else. So I met more nuns and other monks that told me of Rinpoche giving his medicine to them so that they would survive. So, and so he's, because of him, we're now hearing these teachings of Karma Chagme. So I've already taken up half an hour. I'm sorry, I'm just talking away here. All right, so I thought today I would just go over a very few things that, pardon me, kind of really talk to me from these teachings. So these are extensive teachings in these books. And the way Khenpo Rinpoche and the way Karma Chagme say to study these are, this is not something where it's a cover-to-cover book. These, as I said earlier, is a reference material. So if you're learning a new practice or you feel discouraged, you need some inspiration, you're having some obstacles, and you can't necessarily get to a teacher, these books are really full of blessings and wisdom. And in America, we're so lucky, or whoever is listening to this from around the world, most of us can also get to teachers now, but I would always highly recommend read what Karma Chagme wrote. He was pretty right on, even though it's very old. It's he really touches on. So I thought I would first I want to talk about chud. So a great deal of you in recent time have learned the chud or severance practice. It's CHO. It's actually spelled CHO and two little dots over the O, or it's spelled CHOD. The two dots make it chud, a light D at the end of it. And this is practice where you use the drum and the bell, and it's very beautiful, and you offer your body. It's a really special practice. So, but the version that we do, pardon me, I forgot to turn off my phone. The version that we do is Karma Chagme's version. That is his version, Milam Lunten. It also trying to see if I have. It means dream prediction. This practice came to Karma Chagme, so he is the author of that practice. So if you have the ability at some point, try and buy, at least it's in volume 2. There's a beautiful section in there, and also one thing I haven't touched on a whole lot is Khenpo Karthar Rinpoche is a famous storyteller. Now, I would say a lot of Tibetans are because they didn't have TV or radio for the most part when they grew up. So they really learned how to tell stories, and that really went to the heart, really got to you. So he tells great stories of his uncle practicing chud and different people practicing chud. It's very inspiring. So I would check that out. But I think what I'm going to go to is something a little different for a minute. I particularly love to read things around challenges around our meditations because we all have them and we're all different. Some people don't notice things. I feel like I've always had kind of a really sensitive nervous system. I notice noises. Temperature never bothers me because I can always put, something to make me warmer if I'm cold. But I'm particularly sensitive around noises and sounds with meditation. And it's taken me years to kind of go almost desensitize myself. So I thought I would share with you what Karma Chagme talks. In these books, he goes over so many different topics. So I talked a little bit about, I'm going to go back and talk for a moment about just some of the topics that are in number 2. So in volume number 2, he touches a great deal about how to recognize the arising of experience and realization. Of course, more love and compassion. A brief explanation on geomancy. Geomancy has, we would, I think another word is maybe feng shui, but it's a little different with, but this is according to Tibetan Buddhism. It's very fascinating. I highly recommend reading that. And then a really big chapter on instruction on retreat. Everything that challenges you, how to make it more inspiring, all of that. And then the one I talked about, the Chud practice. And then all of these are different practices that kind of build up. And one really important one is to keep your health up. So he also includes white Tara and Searing Ma are long life practices to remove any obstacles to your health and so that you stay strong. And then a chapter that I don't feel comfortable reading a lot because I don't understand it enough yet is Kriya and Charya Tantra and Yoga Tantra for those skilled in ritual and mudras. That's very beautifully done. Then how to purify obscurations of the dead, for the dead. So now we're getting into the later books, 3 and 4, and they really start going a little more deeper into end of life. So, because, you have to think about who it is that's reading these books. These books are for people that may become lamas later on, or if they are on their own. And I work at a university that loves to send out notices if anything strange is going on.
Sorry, I couldn't quite hear you. Could you please repeat what you said?
So, I do that to my phone and now Siri talks to me. I love it. So there are sort of 2 styles of Tibetan Buddhist retreats. Some where you go into a building, maybe with a lot of other people or alone, solitary. And then a very different style that maybe many of you have heard about. Mingyur Rinpoche went on what I would call kind of like a walking retreat where he went all over the place. So a lot of these practices are geared more for those people because in the days of Karma Chagme, most people walked all over the place. They just didn't own hardly anything, and they would just go from place to place. And there's sort of a circuit that a great deal of yogis go on, and they would go there and do their retreats depending on the seasons and how many other people were in front of them in the circuits. It's pretty amazing. So he also in these books goes in great detail on understanding the Bardo, particularly the Bardo means intermediate state, and we have all kinds of Bardos throughout the day. But we're talking the intermediate state from the moment you die to when you're reborn again. And this is something that we have a lot of training in, and we work with a lot of people on. Even Americans are being trained in this now on how to help others as they're dying. So I highly recommend reading these. This is primarily in book 3 and 4. By the way, these were all one book, but because of Rinpoche's teaching in our Western books, they were broken up this way. But this does primarily follow the order. So Karma Chagme Rinpoche has a whole chapter, very long, on a concise liberation through hearing, an introduction to the Bardo. And then later on, moving on to volume 4, let's see, how to choose a pure realm and how to reach a pure realm. So they touch on that again. So I think that's really nice. But now I'm going to go into some of the topics that I chose for today's talk, just to kind of things that talk to me a lot. And I talked about noises a little bit. So let me look here. Okay, I'm now on volume 3. And I'm on page 281 if you're reading with me. This chapter is called, they're always very elaborate because the Tibetan language is very floral. It's really beautiful. The wish fulfilling jewel that brings progress. Instruction on improvement. So I'm kind of jumping into the middle of it because that's where I first found this. Now I'm on page 281. Enhancement through working with disturbing sounds. As a beginner, when you are practicing meditation, you may prefer to be isolated so you can be free from loud or unpleasant sounds that might disturb you. For instance, in Tibet, you might try to avoid foxes and crows because of the loud chattering noises they make. Other common noise problems in Tibet are barking dogs, waterfalls, mother sheep, and their babies mingling in a flock also make a lot of noise. If you have no other place to go, such clamor and distraction can provoke thoughts and create difficulty and have an adverse impact on your meditation. So I know most of us don't worry about mother sheep, but we definitely have stuff here in America, don't we? In a country like the United States, there are a great number of cars, motorcycles, children shouting and crying, and other sources of disruptive noise. Background sounds of aircraft and motor traffic, whether during the day or at night, can seem detrimental to the stability of our meditation. There are all kinds of loud noises and noises everywhere, and some individuals may feel they cannot practice meditation because of this. Whether you can successfully circumvent these factors or not, the problem is not that these disruptions need to be abandoned or eliminated. Rather, it is necessary to employ methods protecting your state of mind so external factors will not be capable of disturbing your peace. So I know this really talks to me. So I'm going to read a little bit more about this, and then I'm going to share a story Rinpoche has about his own sensitivities. So one method for diffusing negative impact of such disturbances, meditation, involve focusing your awareness on the sound of the bird calls or whatever involves focus. Sorry, let me say this again. Oh, I've got to watch the time too. Here we go. One method for diffusing negative impact of such disturbances in meditation involves focusing your awareness on the sound of the bird calls or whatever kind of noise you are hearing. For example, if it is the sound of crows cawing, bring your awareness to the cawing sounds and then examine it. Does the noise exist substantially? Who is being affected by it? Is anything really there? As you investigate in this way, you discover that neither the sound nor the mind are really truly established. Once you discover that the sound and the essential nature of your mind are indistinct from one another, then look at that nature itself. When you do this, the sound will not be eliminated, although you are not hearing the sound as something. If you hear the sound, but feel agitated by it and respond with the thought, this sound bothers me, you surrender to that fixation. This is very much like shamatha. When we're meditating and we suddenly realize we're thinking, we just have to very gently go back to doing the practice, kind of letting go, kind of touch and let go. So I like that they really went into this. And Rinpoche says, Karma Chagme says, through correctly recognizing that neither your mind nor the sounds truly exist, Then meditating on individual sounds with this technique, noises will not disturb you so much. Doing this only once will not be sufficient to dispel the irritation. But if you earnestly apply this technique repeatedly, you will discover that your meditation will improve in this regard. And eventually, it will develop to the point where no matter what sounds and noises arise, they will not bother you in any way. So then Rinpoche said, I can definitely attest to this personally. When I left Tibet, I ended up in a place in India called Buxador. So this is a place that had been the prison, then turned into an internment camp. It was terribly hot and uncomfortable, and there were thousands of monks living all together. There was a lot of noise among the monks, and there were many other noises as well. So it was very difficult for me to be there. Whenever I found time, I moved up to an isolated area on a hill where it was much cooler. Sometimes it was so tranquil there while I was meditating that even quiet sounds seemed like disturbances. He mentioned even a leaf falling on the ground would bother him. As I tried this again and again, my practice became worse to the point that I found that even the sound of occasional leaves falling on the ground provoked thoughts of irritation. Having been through this repeatedly, I eventually concluded even in this quiet environment, my meditation is still affected. Nothing is helping. One day, I was wondering what to do since the slightest noises were causing so much difficulty and discursive thought. I decided to go back among the crowd of monks down at the refugee camp. As I tried to meditate there, at one point I discovered I was able to do so very comfortably, and the sources of noises and irritation no longer bothered me at all. Thus, on the basis of my own experience, I can say this method is definitely beneficial. I just wondered, anyone there have problems with noises? I know I do. I used to. I'm much better now. And we all have different things. Some of us have more visual problems, some environmental. So everyone is a little different. Are you all asleep? No, I'm joking. Do any of you have, if anyone has a problem, oh, you can't raise your hands, but it's okay. All right, so moving on. Then he talks about, and I'll just talk about that. There is right next to our monastery that was being built in the, let's see, my husband and I started going there in the late 80s. There was and even before that, they were doing all the ground work to get everything ready to build the monastery. Right next door was a small little cabin. There were two cabins that were built. One was almost more like a tree house where Lama Yeshe was staying. And then there was another one where another Lama was at. And the Lama Rinpoche would check in on him all the time. And he would say, I'm having such difficulty with my meditation because there's so much noise with all this heavy equipment. I just can't meditate anymore. But Rinpoche shared this technique with him. And over time, it didn't bother him whatsoever. So I thought I would share that with you. Let me see what else. Also, in this chapter, it goes over a great deal moving through any obstacles, the generation and completion stage in deity practice. So if you do those, if you do Chenrezig, Medicine Buddha, Amitabha, Mundro, you should read that section. It's very nice. And I think the very last thing I'd like to really share a little bit are about blessed substances. So again, this is in volume 3. Looks like I'm going to have a class for volume 4. And I'm now on page 225. This was just a general question. This was not really tied in, I don't think, with nope, that's not it. Let me look at volume 4. I keep marking these all wrong. Yep. Volume 4, page 225. Pardon me. So this question is, so I'm going to first give you like a 5-second intro. Over the years, if you go to any events at our monastery or at our centers, you may receive tiny little plastic bags, little round pills. They look like pills, like little round balls, different colors. Sometimes you have blessed ash, sand, rice. You have all these different things. And over time, I'm going to go get some. Hold on, it's right here. Or you might have bought what's called a gao. I've shown these in other classes. This is a relic. It's sort of like a tiny little container. It has a hinge on it at the bottom and the top. And this is a double dorje on one side. On the other side is a Kala chakra. I unscrew the bottom. These are usually not watertight. So inside is a tiny bag. Rinpoche filled this for me many times. I kept getting everything all wet. And inside of it is this tiny bag just full of pills, little bits of rice. You can't tell now because it's so it's kind of all turned to a little bit dusty. So have any of you received anything like this? James says not really. So because we're going to be opening a center soon, we're going to have more opportunities for you to be receiving things like this. And I thought I should talk a little bit about these special substances. So let me read on this. Hold on. 225. All right. And this is what somebody wrote. Or they asked Rinpoche, pardon me. So this is during questions and answers, which are beautiful in this book. They cover everything, the whole gambit. They said, over the years, I've accumulated some blessed substances that I don't know what to do with. I don't even know what they are. Some are from the 16th Karmapa, and some are from when Trungpa died, because they would often give these out. I have the salt, a small vial of salt of the body. I remember I have the salt of the body of the third Jamma Rinpoche. And I don't know what to do with them. What should I do? And he said, you can keep these things on your shrine, and by using them as a support for offerings, prostrations, and so forth, you will accumulate great merit. When you die, you will want to eat them all. And I was once with someone who there was an exorcism. We were up in the mountains and they thought they were dying. And they asked if we could put all the substances of their little reliquary box in their mouth. And I had no idea what they were talking about. And that's what they were doing. They didn't die. They were fine. They were dehydrated. So there's a difference between, and then he talked about some certain things, but I wanted to read a little bit more. This is getting really involved. Okay, so let's do another one. Rinpoche, over the years, I also have received some various blessing pills. I was instructed to take them, but I felt that if I took them, I would run out of them. I still have them, and I think that perhaps I should have taken them. People think they should save them for a special occasion, but normally if someone really needs them, somebody else will give you one. You'll be amazed how many of us have them. Maybe you can say something about when we should take these. And Rinpoche said, hold on to most of them and occasionally eat a little bit of it. This is the reason for the custom for wearing the small locket or gao around one's neck, which is very prevalent throughout Tibet. The reason for wearing it is twofold. First, the locket contains the most important relics, samaya substances, and so forth that you have received. And by wearing it around your neck during your life, it protects you. Then, when you're about to die, you open it up and swallow everything inside of it. If you suddenly die, of course, you would not have the chance to do so. Usually, if people know they're dying or about to breathe their last breath, they gesture to the people around them to open up their lockets and dump it all in their mouth. Then he went on. They said, I seem to recall that the 16th Karmapa had some red pills that might have been like this, and they showed some pills in their locket. The translator then says, to my knowledge, this is the first time Rinpoche is actually telling anyone what these are, because he's the only one who makes them. So what they're talking about is, my husband and I recently went through and looked at what we had. We didn't know we had black pills, and we have a lot of red pills that normally aren't given out very often. And so my husband's gout had broken the back of it. So that's why we had opened it up to take a real examination. So Rinpoche says this is very interesting. Sometime before the death of the 16th Karmapa, there had been blood tests run while he was in New York City. We asked the doctors to return the unused blood. His Holiness gathered these vials of his blood together, wrapped them in a napkin, and affixed a seal to it. Then he handed this to me and said, hold on to this for later. After he passed away, I kept the vials of blood for a long time. Then I thought, well, he gave me these and he told me to hold on to them. It must have been his wish that I do something beneficial with them. So I began to make pills out of them. I have distributed these pills here and especially abroad in countries such as Taiwan. They have acquired a reputation for healing sickness, reducing pain, for example, the pain at the time of death, the pain of terminal illness. The side effect of this has been that people have joked with me about it, saying, oh, you have a Samaya substance that not even the fathers and sons of our lineage have. And it's true. I'm the only one who distributes these because I'm the only one who has them and makes them. I have not distributed these a great deal in America. When I have given them to people, it's mostly when they have given me their gals and asked me to fill them. In this country, I rarely give red pills to people to eat because I'm concerned that they might develop some kind of attitude about what they are. I didn't know this. Once in Ohio, there was a woman who was quite ill with cancer who asked me for a blessing pill. I gave her some of these and she ate them. The next day, she asked what was in the pills, whether there were chemicals in them, and where were they made, and so on. I explained that there were no chemicals in them, and that I made them myself from ground up barley flour and so forth. And I realized that in this country, people are quite worried about ingredients, so I don't give them to people to eat. In Asia, this is not a problem. As long as the blessing substance, people are eager to eat them. So, and anyway, I just wanted to share this with you. I've never since heard Rinpoche ever talk. I was actually there when he talked about this. I've never heard him talk about it since. So, if you are ever given anything, let me know. Or if you're ever interested in getting any of them, and someone's asking about COVID, of course, Rinpoche is now gone. He passed before COVID. But I think also another very important thing with COVID is prayers. Very important. And by the way, I'm going to say this I'm just going to round everything up just right now. All of you are invited to join me on, what is it called? Instagram. I'm starting to do 71 days of Medicine Buddha. I'm going to be 71 in 71 days. So I've just already started it. So right now, there's many other substances. And, yes, it may very well help with COVID, but also prayers really help with COVID and medications help with COVID also. Remember, these were developed during times when people didn't have hospitals or clinics or anywhere to go to. These are people living in the middle of. How do I spell a gal? GAO or GHAO is how you spell gal. Sometimes you can buy them on Etsy. They're harder to find than they used to be. Tibetan Spirit has some. I just saw that today. They're selling them. And what do you do once you buy a gal? Talk to Lama Cathy or Lama, or if you're at our monastery, Lama Lodro, somebody there could fill, Kempo Ujin could fill the gal for you. You could even send it there and they would fill it. So, or you could always send any questions to me at CathyLamo108 at gmail.com. CathyLhamo108 at I'm not saying this to buy anything. I don't want you to buy anything, but I just want you to know that there are these substances. Also, sometimes you might get a tiny little bag of little brown nuggets, you might say, and it's called Mendrup, where it's not necessarily a pill, but it's and it might taste a little sandy because sometimes we do practices where we say millions of mantras, and they mix that with other flour and things, and then we eat little bits of it, and it's just full of blessings. So there's a lot of blessings out there, but the biggest blessing is do your practice, right? And do everything for the benefit of all living beings. Thank you, everyone, for letting me rattle on and share about my love of this book and of the blessings that we've all gotten over the years because of this and of Kempo Rinpoche opening these doors. So let's take a moment and dedicate the merit for those that are in need at this time throughout the entire universe. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day. Bye, everyone.